Your DNA holds secrets older than Spain itself. Long before kingdoms rose and fell, before the Spanish language was even spoken, your genetic code was already being written. It carries the story of migrations, wars, and civilizations that shaped not just Spain, but the people who call it home today. But how much can DNA really tell us? The answer: more than history books ever could. DNA, or acido desoxyribonucleico in Spanish, is the blueprint of life. It's what determines your traits, your ancestry, and even connects you to people from thousands of years ago. Every cell in your body carries a map of your origins, stretching back to the first humans who set foot on the Iberian Peninsula. And when we unlock the secrets of Spanish DNA, we don't just uncover genetics, we reveal a timeline of conquests, cultural exchanges, and forgotten bloodlines that still exist in modern Spaniards today. Spain has always been a crossroads of civilizations, from the earliest hunter-gatherers who roamed its mountains to the great empires that left their mark. Each wave of settlers left behind a genetic fingerprint. But unlike borders on a map, DNA doesn't lie. It doesn't follow political history. It follows real human movement, tracking the migrations of people who shaped what it means to be Spanish today. So what does your DNA say about you? Could you have ancestry you never expected? Maybe traces of North African roots from the time of Al-Andalus? Or perhaps a connection to the Celts who lived in Spain long before the Romans arrived? The answers are in the code, waiting to be read. And as science advances, we're discovering more than ever before. Thousands of years before Spain became a nation, before even the idea of a Spanish identity existed, its genetic foundations were already being laid. The story of Spanish DNA begins with the first humans who set foot on the Iberian Peninsula, people who had no concept of borders, language, or culture as we know them today. But they carried something even more powerful: the genes that would shape the generations to come. The earliest known inhabitants of Spain were Western hunter-gatherers, a resilient people who roamed the land long before farming or civilization took hold. They left behind traces of their existence, not just in ancient cave paintings, but in the DNA of modern Spaniards. Though their way of life faded, their genetic imprint remains, contributing a small yet significant percentage to today's population. Then came the farmers. Around 7,500 years ago, a wave of migration began from the east. These Neolithic settlers, originally from Anatolia, brought agriculture, permanent settlements, and a completely new way of life. They didn't just change the landscape of Iberia, they changed its genetic structure. Over time, these early European farmers mixed with the hunter-gatherers, and their DNA became dominant, forming nearly half of the modern Spanish genome. This explains why Spain, like other Mediterranean nations, shares certain physical traits with populations in Greece, Italy, and even parts of the Middle East. But history never stands still. The greatest transformation came with the arrival of the steppe pastoralists, a group of people from the vast plains of what is now Ukraine and southern Russia. Unlike the earlier migrations, this one was a genetic takeover. The men who arrived didn't just settle. They replaced nearly all the local male lineages. Within a few generations, the dominant Y DNA in Spain had shifted to R1b, a marker still found in the majority of Spanish men today. These steppe migrants brought not only their genes, but also the foundations of what would later become Indo-European languages, forever shaping the cultural and genetic identity of Spain. The merging of these three major groups, hunter-gatherers, Neolithic farmers, and steppe migrants, created the foundation of Spanish DNA. Every Spaniard today carries some combination of these ancient lineages, a living record of prehistoric migrations that happened long before written history. And yet, this was only the beginning. Larger forces were about to arrive, forces that would reshape Spain's DNA once again. Spain's genetic story is not just one of ancient migrations. It's a tale of empires, conquests, and cultural clashes that left an undeniable mark on its people. Every great civilization that ruled over Spain didn't just shape its history, they shaped its DNA. And while borders shifted and rulers changed, the genetic traces of these past empires remain, hidden within modern Spaniards. One of the earliest major influences came with the arrival of the Romans. When they marched into Iberia in 218 BC, they didn't just bring roads, law, and Latin. They brought people. Soldiers, merchants, and settlers from all corners of the Roman Empire made Spain their home. Over 6 centuries of rule, intermarriage between the local Iberian population and these newcomers introduced new genetic elements, particularly from Italy and the Eastern Mediterranean. Though the Roman cultural legacy still defines Spain today, their genetic impact was relatively small. Most of Spain's core ancestry remained unchanged, despite the empire's long presence. Then came the Visigoths. As the Roman Empire crumbled, these Germanic tribes took control of Spain in the 5th century. Unlike the Romans, they didn't establish large settlements or bring waves of new settlers. Instead, they ruled as an elite minority, and their genetic contribution was subtle. Traces of Germanic ancestry can be found in Spain today, but at levels far lower than many expect. In fact, modern Spaniards have far less Germanic DNA than many Northern and Central Europeans. But one of the most profound genetic influences came in 711 AD, when Muslim forces from North Africa crossed into Iberia. For nearly 800 years, Al-Andalus flourished under Islamic rule. This wasn't just a political conquest, it was a demographic shift. Traders, scholars, and settlers arrived from across the Islamic world, bringing Middle Eastern and North African ancestry into the Spanish gene pool. DNA studies confirm that modern Spaniards carry 5 to 10% North African ancestry on average, though it varies by region. Paradoxically, the highest percentages are not in Andalusia, where the Moors ruled the longest, but in Galicia and western Spain, places that were never under direct Muslim control. The reason? Internal migration and resettlement after the Reconquista spread these genetic influences across Spain in unexpected ways. When the Catholic monarchs reconquered the last Muslim stronghold in 1492, they sought to erase Islamic influence, not just culturally, but genetically. Muslim and Jewish communities faced forced conversion, expulsion, or worse. This period of mass displacement reshaped Spain's population structure, but genetic traces of these communities endured. Even today, some Spaniards carry Sephardic Jewish ancestry, a silent reminder of a once thriving population that left an indelible mark. By the end of the medieval period, Spain's DNA had been shaped by the rise and fall of powerful empires. Romans, Visigoths, and Moors all played their part, but the Iberian genetic identity remained uniquely Spanish, an evolving blend of ancient and medieval migrations, still visible in the people of Spain today. For centuries, Spain's genetic makeup has been shaped by migrations, conquests, and cultural shifts. But what does modern DNA research tell us about the genetic landscape of Spain today? The answer is far more complex than national borders suggest. Spain is not one uniform genetic group. It's a patchwork of regional identities, each with its own unique ancestry, shaped by history in ways we are only now beginning to fully understand. One of the most fascinating discoveries in Spanish genetics is the clear division between different regions. Studies show that genetic differences don't run north to south, as one might expect from Spain's long history of conquest and reconquest, but rather east to west. This means that people from Galicia, in the northwest, have more in common genetically with the Portuguese than with Spaniards from Valencia. Meanwhile, Catalans and Basques show distinct genetic signatures that set them apart from the rest of Spain. The Basques, in particular, remain one of Europe's most genetically unique populations. Unlike other regions of Spain, Basques show very little influence from the major migrations that shaped the rest of the country. They have retained a genetic profile that dates back to the Iron Age, with almost no evidence of significant Roman, Visigothic, or even Moorish ancestry. Their distinctiveness goes beyond genetics. The Basque language, Euskara, is unlike any other in Europe, reinforcing the idea that their ancestors were largely isolated from external influences for thousands of years. Further south, the genetic picture becomes more complex. In central and southern Spain, centuries of migration have created a far more blended ancestry. DNA studies confirm that people in these regions have varying levels of North African, Middle Eastern, and Mediterranean influences, a result of centuries of trade, conquest, and cultural exchange. Yet, surprisingly, the highest percentages of North African ancestry are not found in the south, but in parts of western Spain, particularly in Galicia and Extremadura. This unexpected distribution is believed to be the result of population movements after the fall of Al-Andalus, when people from different regions of Spain resettled in newly conquered territories, carrying their mixed ancestry with them. Y-DNA analysis, which traces paternal lineage, reveals another interesting pattern. The most common male haplogroup in Spain is R1b, found in nearly 70% of Spanish men, linking them to ancient Indo-European migrations. But there are also regional variations. E1b1b, a haplogroup associated with North Africa, appears more frequently in the southern and western regions, while J2, often linked to ancient Mediterranean populations, is more common in the east. These genetic markers tell a story of historical movement, settlement, and integration, showing just how interconnected Spain has been with the rest of the world. Despite all these differences, genetic studies consistently show that Spaniards are, at their core, a European people. Compared to other populations on the continent, they are most closely related to the French, Italians, and even the Irish in some regions. Yet, their genetic diversity is greater than that of Northern Europeans, reflecting the multiple layers of migration that have shaped Spain's past. DNA has given us a new way to understand history, not just the history found in books, but the history written in our own cells. And for Spain, that history is one of resilience, adaptation, and a deep connection to both Europe and the wider Mediterranean world. Spain has always been a land of movement, a bridge between continents, and a meeting point for civilizations. But what does that mean for its DNA? The answer lies not just in Spain's genetic diversity, but in how its ancestry connects to people beyond its borders. DNA doesn't recognize modern nations. It traces the deep historical bonds that link populations across time and geography. One of the strongest genetic connections Spain shares is with Latin America. During the Age of Exploration, millions of Spaniards crossed the Atlantic, bringing their genes to the New World. Today, Spanish ancestry is deeply embedded in the genetic makeup of many Latin American countries, particularly in Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, and Cuba. But what's even more fascinating is how this connection worked both ways. While Spanish settlers left their genetic imprint in the Americas, some indigenous and African influences from colonial Latin America made their way back to Spain, especially in port cities like Seville and Cadiz. But Spain's genetic links go beyond the Spanish-speaking world. Studies show that Spaniards have a surprising level of genetic similarity with the Irish and the British, especially in the northwestern region of Galicia. This is due to ancient migrations of Celtic tribes, long before Spain and Ireland became distinct nations. Even today, Galicia's music, traditions, and even some words in its regional language, Galician, bear striking similarities to those of Ireland and Scotland, reflecting a shared ancestry that DNA has now confirmed. Another unexpected connection comes from Scandinavia. Although Spain was never part of the Viking world, small traces of Scandinavian ancestry can be found in certain regions. This is likely due to the Viking raids along the northern coast of Spain during the early medieval period, as well as later trade and migration. While the genetic impact is minimal, it's yet another example of how Spain's DNA has been shaped by distant peoples over time. Spain also shares deep genetic ties with Italy and Greece, a result of centuries of interaction across the Mediterranean. From the time of the Phoenicians to the Roman Empire and beyond, the movement of merchants, soldiers, and settlers created lasting genetic similarities between Spaniards and their southern European neighbors. This connection is particularly strong in the eastern regions of Spain, such as Catalonia and Valencia, where Mediterranean influences have historically been the most pronounced. Yet, for all these global connections, Spain remains distinct. Genetic studies consistently show that while Spaniards share ancestry with many different populations, they also have a unique genetic identity shaped by the country's own complex history. This balance between external influences and internal continuity is what makes Spain's DNA so fascinating. It tells a story not just of migration, but of adaptation, resilience, and the blending of cultures over thousands of years. Spain's DNA is a reflection of thousands of years of history, but with that history comes myths, stories passed down for generations that don't always align with genetic reality. While Spain's past is undeniably rich and complex, Modern genetic research has shattered many long-held misconceptions about Spanish ancestry. So what are some of the biggest myths about Spanish DNA? And what does science say instead? One of the most widespread beliefs is that all Spaniards have significant Moorish ancestry due to the centuries of Islamic rule. While North African influence is certainly present in Spanish DNA, the way it is distributed is far from what many expect. The highest percentages of North African ancestry are not found in Andalusia, where Muslim rule lasted the longest, but in the northwest of Spain, particularly in Galicia and western Castile. This is likely due to population movements after the Reconquista, when people from different regions migrated and resettled throughout Spain. While some Spaniards have genetic links to North Africa, the overall percentage is lower than commonly assumed, with most studies estimating it between 5 to 10% on average. Another common misconception is that the Basques are completely unrelated to the rest of Spain. It's true that Basques have a unique genetic signature and have remained relatively isolated from major migrations, but they are not entirely separate from other Spaniards. Their DNA still shares commonalities with the rest of the Iberian Peninsula, particularly with northern Spaniards. The main difference is that Basques have less genetic influence from later historical migrations, such as the Roman and Moorish periods, but they are still very much part of Spain's genetic landscape. A surprising myth that DNA studies have debunked is the idea that Spain is overwhelmingly Mediterranean in its genetic makeup. While Spain has strong connections to southern Europe, genetic comparisons show that Spaniards actually have more in common with the French and even the Irish in some regions than with Greeks or Sicilians. This is due to the influence of prehistoric migrations from Central and Western Europe, particularly during the Bronze Age, which introduced Indo-European ancestry that remains dominant in Spain today. Many people also assume that the Visigoths, the Germanic rulers of Spain before the Moors, left a large genetic imprint on the population. In reality, their impact was minimal. Unlike the massive steppe migrations that reshaped Spain's gene pool thousands of years earlier, the Visigoths were a ruling elite rather than a large-scale settlement. As a result, Germanic ancestry in Spain is present but at much lower levels than in other parts of Europe. Perhaps the biggest misunderstanding about Spanish DNA is the belief that the genetic structure of Spain today is the same as it was centuries ago. In reality, populations have shifted, mixed, and evolved over time. The Reconquista, the expulsion of various groups, and even modern migration patterns have all played a role in shaping Spain's present-day genetic landscape. Spain has never been static. Its DNA, like its history, is a story of movement and change. Genetics has already transformed our understanding of Spain's past. But what about its future? As technology advances, DNA research is uncovering even more details about Spain's ancestry, health, and the way its population is evolving. The story of Spanish DNA isn't finished. It's still being written, and the discoveries being made today could change the way we see history, identity, and even medicine. One of the most exciting breakthroughs in Spanish genetics comes from ancient DNA studies. By extracting genetic material from prehistoric remains, scientists are able to reconstruct entire genomes of people who lived thousands of years ago. This allows researchers to track how different migrations shaped Spain over time with more precision than ever before. New findings are even challenging older theories, revealing that some migrations were more significant and others less impactful than previously thought. Modern genetics is also shedding light on Spain's diversity in unexpected ways. Studies show that while the country has distinct regional genetic patterns, there is also a surprising amount of shared ancestry among Spaniards, even across different historical and linguistic regions. This suggests that despite centuries of division, internal migration and population mixing played a key role in shaping Spain's modern gene pool. But the impact of DNA research goes beyond history. It's also influencing the future of medicine in Spain. Genetic studies are helping scientists understand hereditary diseases, improve treatments, and even personalize medical care based on a person's ancestry. Some genetic conditions are more common in Spain than in other parts of Europe, and by analyzing the DNA of different regions, researchers are developing better ways to diagnose and treat these conditions. In the coming years, genetic medicine could revolutionize healthcare in Spain, offering new treatments tailored to each individual's genetic profile. Another major factor shaping Spain's genetic future is modern migration. While Spain has historically been shaped by migrations from Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, today it is experiencing new waves of immigration from Latin America, Africa, and Asia. These migrations are adding new genetic diversity to Spain, just as past migrations did thousands of years ago. In a few generations, DNA studies will likely show an even greater blending of global ancestries within Spain's population. The more we learn about DNA, the more we realize that genetics is not just about the past, it's about where we're going. Spain's genetic future is being shaped right now, and as research continues, we'll uncover even more about the connections between ancestry, identity, and the people who will define Spain in the years to come. Spain's DNA is more than just a reflection of its past. It's a living record of human history, encoded in every Spaniard today. It tells the story of migrations, empires, and civilizations that shaped not just a country, but an entire people. From the earliest hunter-gatherers to the impact of the Moors, from Roman settlers to steppe migrants, every chapter of Spain's past is still present in its genes. But beyond the science, what does this all mean? It means that Spanish identity is not defined by a single origin, but by thousands of years of movement and change. The idea of a pure Spanish lineage is a myth. Spain has always been a crossroads of cultures, with its people carrying the genetic echoes of those who came before. The diversity seen in Spain today, from the Basques to the Andalusians, from the Galicians to the Catalans, is a testament to the many different influences that shaped the Iberian Peninsula. DNA research has given us a deeper understanding of where Spain's people come from, but it also raises new questions. How will modern migration influence Spain's genetic makeup in the coming centuries? Will we uncover even more forgotten migrations buried within the genome? And how will this knowledge change the way Spaniards see themselves and their history? What we do know is that genetics is rewriting history, not replacing it, but adding new dimensions to it. It is showing us that Spain's past is far more intricate than we once believed, and that its people are connected not just to each other, but to populations across Europe, North Africa, and beyond. DNA proves that identity is not about borders or nations. It's about the shared ancestry that links us all. So, what does your DNA say about you? Could your own genetic story hold surprises? Maybe an unexpected connection to an ancient migration, or a lineage tied to a historical event. The only way to know is to look deeper, because history isn't just something we read about. It's something we carry with us, written in our own cells.